And I think if we are going to communicate, again, we need to make sure that we're telling people about the things that they care about. So they will want to know that we're very clean. They will want to know that access is easy. They will want to know that we've got great surgeons, or we're brilliant at hips or knees or whatever it's going to be. And I know this is a difficult area if we're in a lovely brotherhood and don't want to compete with each other, but there's a lovely tension, of course, running through policy, and I don't see that changing with the Conservatives anytime soon. And what's interesting in other areas is how we can, when we do this and we demonstrate some of those messages that matter, we can make a big difference. And I just thought it was interesting to share here something from Tesco. This is my local Elephant and Castle Tesco, actually, and not that far from here. Now, Terry Leahy, who runs Tesco, gets 10p out of every pound spent in Britain in supermarkets. Terry is a lovely, charitable man, and when you walk into his shops, you see things like this. We love to know what you think because all your comments count. You wanted more space in the entrance? We've given you more space in the entrance. We love you. Please don't go to Morrison's, Waitrose, or anywhere else, because when I go into local hospitals or councils, I don't see stuff like that. What they've done in the Northeast, this is their branded train. They've got together with the PCTs, with the Acute Trust, the police force, the council, and they've got this campaign that they put together. I think it was only 10,000 per organisation, where they've got their train, they've got this poster campaign. We asked what you wanted. So here you've got a medical orderly there with the police. We're worried about antisocial behaviour. We halved crime by targeting these different areas, showing how the public service is working together. Some of the highest levels of satisfaction in England. And again, stolen directly from Tesco. It's not, they didn't go and hire brand consultants to do this. They did it themselves. And stolen from Innocent Drinks there in the bottom right. Anybody drink Innocent Drinks? You'll see on Innocent Drinks as a way of building a bond with you as customers, little messages like bored. Give us a ring. Ring the banana phone. Come and visit us at Fruit Towers. Now, Innocent Drinks do not do this to entertain the sort of, dispossessed of Shrewsbury Ness who've got nowhere else to go, or the Green Ink Brigade, or people with dogs and things. They are not doing it for that reason. And I can promise you, they're clients of ours. Their offices are not swamped by strange and deluded people who need friends. What they are doing is trying to create a relationship with customers and show that they're interested in them. And in this example here, I don't know if you can read it on the page, but what it's saying is we'd love to hear from you. So rather than ring us when you've just been knocked over, need somewhere to live, your mother's been dispossessed, your child has special educational needs, just give us a ring. We'd like to talk to you. They will anyway. And it's that sort of message. And they've used that across their region with different, in this case, different local authorities. In North Tyneside, we're doing it. What's this one? In Sunderland, again, we asked what you wanted, you said this. It's been very, very successful. And I think just being a bit imaginative, the public, is very worried about a whole range of issues. What our young people are doing, drunkenness, etc., etc., etc. You're at the front end of that. Showing how you fit together with things can only help. And there are also, of course, some challenges that I think we should reflect on. One of the things that's absolutely clear, and I am quite worried actually about the GP survey at the moment, which distributes money to individual GPs depending on how happy their patients are, is that certain places, some of you, even if I take the best, if you're the best people at running hospitals in Britain and you're the worst, if I take you and drop you all into a different part of Britain, how you're rated as a group of people, as a group of managers, will be different, even if you're exactly the same. And that's because how people feel about things in different places in Britain is dependent not on the quality of public services sometimes, but actually the very nature of individual places. And the comprehensive area assessment, which Barbara Young is speaking and Steve Bundred is speaking, it's something we're running on Thursday next week, shows that difference maintained. So if you look, for example, at how happy people are with their council, you can see the yellow line shows that that's the top level of performance when we first ran this analysis a few years ago. If you were serving somewhere like Hackney or Newham, you will never ever achieve the same sort of score as somebody serving somewhere like Test Valley. It is not going to happen. I will pay you £1 million each if that was to occur, because brilliance looks different in different places. So you get a medal from the Queen if you're a very mixed up place in terms of lots of different people and lots of poverty in the case of local government. If you can get sort of even 50% to be happy, if you achieve that in somewhere like Guildford, you should be sacked and driven from office with no pension immediately. Brilliance looks different in different places, and it's the same in the National Health Service. If you look at primary care trusts and how happy people are, no place is in the top right-hand corner of that chart. Very, very mixed in terms of the number of people who live there, and all love their local GP and primary care services. And very interesting, anybody here from Lambeth? Very interesting to see Lambeth doing well, where of course perhaps for local difficulties in Lambeth in decades gone by, we've actually made perhaps more of an effort to engage with different communities in our area than we perhaps have in other places. Lambeth is an outlier, but generally people follow that trajectory. And it is harder to serve in the NHS in particular, more so than in local government, lots of different people. When we started to work with Newham, and it's the same pattern for the Acute Trust, there's the acute, it's exactly the same pattern. When we started to work with Newham, what was interesting is the board had not grasped the fact that the reason they were so lowly rated was that actually white people, old white folks, were somewhere up the chart. They were used to being treated like shit and were quite happy with it. The black people who lived in Newham thought it was okay, but Asian people in Newham were probably sort of somewhere about here. And generally, as a rule of thumb, the NHS seems to have problems with Asian people of all kinds, some of which is about differing expectations. Asian people often revere older people in a way that culture in Britain does not. And so we find that while Asian people like the NHS as an idea, they are much more critical of it when we talk about their actual experience of it. But understanding the different catchment groups you've got, again, things that Newham have now done subsequent to this, can make huge differences, but it does mean more time is needed to explain that actually, we don't just treat people on the basis of age and how important they are in this community. Here we go on the basis of how ill they are. Explaining these things takes time. But generally, in terms of raw scores that you get from any sort of measurement, they will be different in different places, sometimes because of what we do, sometimes because of the nature of place, and we can measure for that and can account for it, and we should. Finally, I think one of the greatest ironies of the last decade in public service has been what we do with the staff. 1.3 million people or so that we employ. Obviously, only the Indian Railways and Chinese Army have more people than us. And yet, a real issue, when we look at what makes people happy with the NHS, staff bad-mouthing is still, to this day, a huge problem. People who meet people who work in the NHS feel worse about it than people who don't. Now, this is unfortunate because there's so many of them. If I could lock them in a gated compound somewhere with concentration camp guards around them, it would be okay, but there's a problem because they're allowed out. When you look at what doctors say, they've all got quaff-class Mercedes, much better paid, slagging off the service very happily all the time, the most trusted people in Britain. But even clinical managers quite happy to put the boot in. And it's a real challenge. And so when we look at the things there that do seem to make big differences, there are real differences between the best councils, the best hospitals, in terms of how people are being managed and led. And I think some of this is about our behaviour as managers. So, if we just go back, actually, if we look at different, councils or hospitals, we find no difference in terms of how happy people are with their pay and whether or not the organisation is well rated by the inspectorate. No correlation at all. No correlation on the amount of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is crap everywhere. But somehow the best performers have found ways round it. And it seems to be all about listening to staff. If you look at councils, the best councils seem to be more likely to let people feel they've had an input into the way jobs done. More likely to say they've got opportunity to show initiative. We know, most of us, don't we, that pulling up a plant every 5 minutes to look at the roots, just to check that it's growing properly, then stuck it back down in again, doesn't really help horticulture. But some of us do that. I've just come from a police force yesterday where the manager had decided that her 5 staff, were not allowed to send emails to anybody else in the force until she'd read them. As you can imagine, there were some problems. And telling people how they're doing is a key issue. We just don't like doing that. We are not systematic enough. And the ones that do turn out to perform better according to the inspectorates. And it's the same, on information. People in the best places much more likely to feel they have the faintest idea what's going on. Big, complex organisations, communications becomes more and more important. 5 times more likely in the best than the worst to feel that they know what's going on in local government, and these patterns are very similar everywhere else. We need also to sell the big picture. What I find interesting is that everybody says, yeah, I know what's going on in oncology, I know what's going on in orthopaedics, I know what's going on in x-rays, we're a great team. And it doesn't matter whether you're rubbish or brilliant, that always happens. Everybody loves their team and knows their team. What the big difference seems to be in both the NHS, local government and policing, and indeed in the private sector, is this point about the overall objectives where the best somehow have managed to spend time on what I, in my own career, now I'm a chief executive, when I was a graduate trainee, used to think was trite bullshit from people like me. But I have to believe my own evidence. And that is that where we can show people the bigger mission that we are part of, the overarching goal that we're trying to achieve as an organisation, and we can get people to be enthusiastic and buy into that with a compelling narrative, we will perform better.